Welcome to another exciting session at K2 2021. Today, this session is actually my favorite session of the day as a public policy graduate student. It is a discussion on GST demystification, online skill gaming in India. The moderator for this session is Mr. Bipin Sapra, partner EY, Mr. Malay Kumar Shukla, Chief Legal and Compliance Officer, Games 24/7, Mr. Gopal Jain, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court of India, and Mr. Siddharth Sharma, Head of Strategy, Head Digital Works Private Limited. I'd like to hand it over to Mr. Sapra to, to initiate the discussion and continue the conversation, take the panel discussion forward. Over to you, Mr. Sapra.
Thank you, Soham. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having us here. Welcome to everybody, my fellow panelists, and everybody who has joined here. Online gaming has been a great development in the past few years, and it provides avenues for an on-demand, real-time gameplay without the limitations of a physical venue and time zones. COVID-19 and the resultant social distancing norms have further forced the masses to explore alternative means of recreation and social engagement, and in turn aided the growth of online gaming. It's a really growing market, and if you really see globally, it's almost a 50 billion US dollar market, and it's estimated to grow to almost $122 billion by 2025. So we are seeing a lot of growth out here, and it's become one sector which is going to impact the economy in a big way. There are a number of issues which the online gaming is facing, and one of them is to really how is it gets differentiated as a game of skill as compared to game of chance, which we normally known as online gambling or other things. Those are things which I think the legislature, the lawmakers are also grappling with. And recently, the GST committee, GST Council has created a GON to really put forward their view and create a policy document which can be used for creating what GST should be taxed. Why GST is important in this sector, how this it's going to impact the sector, that's what we want to debate today. And on an opening note, I'll take this to Malay. Hi, Malay. My question would be: you are an industry person and you have been here for some time. What's your take on how this industry is going, and what impact do you see overall of this industry on the Indian economy?
So, thank you, Mr. Sabra. I think you mentioned rightly that this is a fast-growing sector, and industry estimates would put the industry size to about $1 billion USD in 2020. And given the pace at which the industry is going and all the changes that are happening in the infrastructure, technology infrastructure, and the developments that are happening in the gaming space itself, we expect this industry to double in size and should be in the range of $2 billion by 2023. All this also ties in with the broader objective of the government to make this India $1 trillion digital economy. So we definitely see a lot of prospects and growth coming in this sector, and of course all that with the support of the innovation that is happening in the industry and the support that the industry can get from the government.
Great. Siddharth, coming to you, this sector is growing really fast, and I don't have to tell you that you are absolutely in the center of that. What do you think the industry needs at this time, which will really propel the growth? What type of things you are looking at, which would be enablers for the growth of this industry?
So primarily, it would be investor comfort, because any sector needs an inflow of funds to come in to grow businesses, to have smaller businesses, get into this space. Companies like ours and Malays are larger, older players, but as a burgeoning sector, it shouldn't be a barrier to entry for smaller players to sort of build in, come in, be a part of this larger ecosystem. And the first fundamental thing is access to capital. Now, the access to capital's primary impediment today is regulatory uncertainty, be it on, what is your game? Is it a game of skill, game of chance, gambling? What kind of laws are passed state to state, or even on issues such as taxation? What are the uncertainties around it? If that piece, which is the single largest obstacle, sort of start seeing clarity, and we have one recently very favorable judgment that we got from the Madras High Court, and similarly for fantasy games in the Supreme Court. But if we see more of that, it will at least make the lawmakers start thinking and looking at this as, how do I formalize and regularize this industry and this business and recognize it, which will then lead to money coming in. That in my opinion is the most important thing that we need to propel this industry further.
Great. Picking up from where you left, Mr. Jain, coming to you, you have a lot of experience in terms of litigation law. What Siddharth said is amply true, that the debate versus game of skill versus game of chance has been really impacting this industry and impacting how GST will be charged. What's your take on how this should be tackled legally?
So I think the good news here, starting with the good news, is that the Supreme Court now, having considered the views of different high courts, the Punjab and Haryana High Court and the Rajasthan High Court, has affirmatively said that these are all games of skill. And I think, taking a cue from what the earlier speaker said, that business stability through legal recognition and backed by judicial orders is perhaps the best form of skill, because this gives complete certainty and assuages both stakeholders and investors, because it has what I call the judicial seal of approval. Typically in India, as you know, perceptions always matter, and mischaracterization and misbranding can always take center stage. So this whole debate about fantasy sports being related to betting and gambling unfortunately created a cloud around it, which now, as I indicated, by 3 different high courts and the Supreme Court, have brought a fair amount of clarity, because these sports require considerable amount of skill, judgment, attention, based on a significant amount of data and analytics, and then you select your team. And this is really linked to a real life event and gives sports fans a platform for engagement. Very different, and this is completely unlinked to the outcome of the final game at all. So all its nature and characteristics are couched and flow out of skill and judgment. Even on GST, because it is always the presumption that it is not a game of skill, which became the basis for having the lack of clarity even on that front. And by putting a closure to this debate in the recent judgment in July 2021, where the court uses the word "this issue" as in skill versus chance is no longer res integra, as in it's no longer open, it's nicely settled. So the court showed great skill, if I may say so, in bringing clarity on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Jain. Malay, coming back to you, can you explain to our audience how does the revenue model of any online game works in terms of what is the stake, what is the stake fee, what is the platform fee, or what we know as a rake fee, and on what do you normally pay GST, so that we can begin our discussion as to what are the issues involved.
So the way the skill gaming platforms work is that they provide an online service for conducting the game. Players that participate in the game will, they will put in their entry fees, and there will be a platform charge, which is typically a fixed upfront known percentage charge. It could range between 4 to 20% depending on the value of stakes. So the platform actually charges a fixed amount for these services, and whatever is the residual amount of entry fee that comes in is basically goes out to the person who wins the game, or distributed amongst the winners in the game. So the revenue that is made by the platforms is what is offered as the taxable offered as the taxable value of services for the purposes of GST. Now, because skill games generally are not in the nature of actionable claims that can be taxed under basically they're exempted under the GST Schedule 3, uh, and are not classified as either goods or services. So therefore, these services are subject to 18% charge under the classification of other online content not elsewhere included. So GST is discharged on the gaming revenue that the gross gaming revenue that the operator earns, and that is, and as I said, applying the system of valuation, that the gaming revenue is basically net of what is amount that is collected by the platform, and the remaining amount of the entry fees are distributed amongst the players. So that's broadly how gaming platforms operate in terms of how the transactions occur between the players and how platform fees are charged.
Yeah. So just to it depends upon whether it's maybe a game of rummy or what do you call fantasy sports or any other type of game. Ultimately, it's basically a fee on which is being charged by the platform, and that is the service which the platform is providing to the players. Whatever they put forward is something different, but and the GST is paid on the fee. Siddharth, what do you see are the issues which are really impacting the payment of GST? What disputes do you see happening in the field because of these?
So I'd say there are some issues depending on the kind of games. Earlier, skill gaming used to primarily be only rummy. It was very easy to calculate how taxes had to be paid under the service tax regime. It was pretty clear. Then poker came in. The game is slightly more nuanced on how it's played, how the hands are played. Then fantasy sports came in. So as the new kinds of skill game offerings start coming into the market, the laws also have to keep you know it being in sync and in line with the business model without looking at how the underlying game is really played, because all these games work only on a platform model. What has happened is the ambiguity, or I don't know, the confusion that is looking to be created at the moment, because in our eyes and in our mind there is no confusion at this point on how we are taxed and how we should be taxed. Is that, again, going back to what Mr. Jain said, the mischief is that if I categorize these games as gambling, then I can charge you under a different section. Whereas if I leave you, in the same as a skill game, or as a there is no section that specifically addresses our sector. So maybe a clarification would help. But otherwise, if you club games like ours, which are played for real money and but on a service charge, it should be, the service tax regime is what should continue to operate, and what we continue to follow. But the issue here is when you bring in the mischief of, is this gambling or is this skill gaming? And if I do concede that if it is skill gaming, what are the other ways that I can extract more value out of it by seeing in the way your business is conducted, when do you actually bank the money? Because in our business, the only revenue is created when we charge a platform fee. Any other monies that are collected are actually held in trust on behalf of the player. So this is I wouldn't say it has become an area of ambiguity now, as the taxman has started probing different business models. It began with fantasy sports, and now it's slowly moving into the larger segment of skill-based gaming. So that's why we need some kind of clarification, because everything is now under one umbrella of, you're a skill game or you're not a skill game, irrespective of the manner in which the game is actually conducted. So we actually need some help there to convince the key stakeholders now that this council has been set up to investigate this particular issue.
Great. Mr. Jain, coming to you. So now we know the issue basically is there are two folds: game of skill and game of chance. That's one issue, and the platform fee versus the entire stake fee. Uh, what to tax on and what is being taxed. As as per the GST law, in case of game of chance, they have taxed the entire stake fee at a 28%, and while in case of online gaming, it's an 18% on the platform fee. From a law perspective, what difference do you see, and how this can be, how this the gap can be mitigated? What advice would you give to the GOM to really factor in their when they submit their report, that so that this issue should not come up at the field level?
I think fundamental to the question that you've asked is about approach. If you look at any sector, you take telecom as an example, right? There was a license fee and a non-license fee. They created some hybrid word called adjusted gross revenue, and we've had 16 years of confusion and disputes. So first thing is, when you have a nascent sector with the kind of prospect that it has, you need to have a regime with complete clarity to give stability to business. And therefore, when you recognize that this is growing, you need to have a sector specific provision which addresses it, so there is absolutely no ambiguity. And your whole approach today, when you talk about ease of business and faceless bracket nameless form of taxation, you must recognize why these issues are coming and address it within the regime itself. Second, the Bombay High Court also had an occasion to deal with it. They've also rendered a judgment looking at the provisions of the GST Act and the schedule, which was mentioned by Mele. So, respect for judicial decisions is very important. Tax authorities always try and do a bypass or think, because we have power, let me tweak and change. So, it's like a catch up game. Whereas the sanctity of a judicial outcome, which I remember when Mr. Jaitley had taken over as the finance minister, had said, in the context of those pending cases in Vodafone, we respect court verdicts. So following the court verdicts becomes the second important form of ensuring these issues don't linger. And third, the prize money is really a pass-through. The revenue that you get is really in terms of the platform fee. And therefore, the GST must be based on it, and the applicable rate, let's say 18%, should apply. So things which are clear, actually you create some cloud and doubt about it, then it spreads like a virus. So the law should be a good containment zone. It should address these issues, and for growing sectors like this, their first philosophy should be, we must support the sector so it does well, not to make it as a golden cash cow. And second, as I indicated, that you just add in a sector specific provision for this and make it very clear. Here's prize money, here's your platform fee, GST will be charged on this, and the issue of skill versus chance, as I indicated earlier, classification is already addressed. So that's where the taxman will show skill. Right now, he's just being chancy, and therefore he's created uncertainty. So the whole ethos of a robust legal framework to be read as a tax stable regime should be something they must implement, especially as we head into what I call a digital ecosystem. We don't want hangovers of the past to continue. So they must start on a clean slate on this, particularly for a sector which offers so much to people in more ways than one.
Great. Malay, my question to you, as an industry man, if at all, and see, the government is trying to gather maximum revenues. They have an inclination to tax this sector at a higher rate. My view is that it's a simple platform, like any other platform on which any other, whether goods are sold or services are provided. This is another service being provided, and 18% is at par. If at all the government decides to tax this at a higher rate, what would happen to the industry?
Yeah. So, Mr. Sabra, I just wanted to, before we answer your question, I wanted to certainly acknowledge the efforts of the government to constitute the GUM to look into the sector. And I think all of these issues that we are discussing are very relevant, and a better understanding of the industry will be much more helpful for the government to actually come up with a reasonable policy. So, with that said, I think the larger issue that we are, sorry, what was your second part of the question?
My question is simple, that like if you look at it, if a higher rate or if it's shifted from a platform to a stake fee, in all their wisdom, what would be the impact on the industry? How would it
Okay.
move?
So there have been a lot of global studies where the GGR model is taxed in different jurisdictions, and a lot of those studies indicate that the maximum amount of compliance happens in the range of 15 to 20% of tax on GGR, which also means several things. One is that higher compliance not only means higher revenues, also ensures that better business practices are followed by the operators, and it is also in the interest of the players themselves who are consumers of this service. So that would be one. And I think another important aspect to keep in mind is that digital services are available are available for a much longer periods. In fact, some games like card games can be available for 24/7. Right, people can access those services any point of time. So there is always the players would tend to redeploy some of their winnings in while for playing additional games. So net the it is up to the player to consume more services, and therefore be subject to more taxes. And it should and if the players are consuming more services, there's obviously more revenue that's being generated and more tax coming in. As we reduce the kitty that goes back to the player, the behavior is expected to be altered. And net, would that achieve the objective of revenue? Probably the answer is no, because at the very outset, if there's a much higher rate of taxation beyond what is globally accepted in these models, then that disincentive for redeploying revenue in general on the just visibly just getting less money out of the exercise of skill would probably affect user behavior and not generate sufficient revenues for, or rather not be an incremental a good approach for incremental revenues. And the test case here to validate what we are saying is to actually look at the past. And the government, of course, can look at data and see how the sector has grown and how revenue compliance and collection has grown over time. And truly speaking, have there been really any instances where the government has seen that despite the sector growing, compliance levels have gone down? So if you look at the history and how in the last 5 to 10 years when the sector has grown tremendously, and also the future path seems to be very positive. Given all this backdrop, we think that rocking the ship might change impact the economics of the whole way in which the business is being run, and therefore can be unsettling in many ways to the not to the interest of either of the parties involved, whether it's the players, whether it's the operators, or whether it's the government itself for the for purposes of revenue. So overall, we think that the reasonable tax rate is the ideal solution for this, and the history of tax compliance and the growing tax revenues and the growing industry are good indicators of what has worked in the past, and should be seen as an important guideline for policy going forward.
Great. Siddharth, your closing comments very quickly. We are running out of time.
I mean, just to reaffirm what Mala has been thinking, I think the first thing that we need is consensus in the center, because we are litigating in different states on how this entire industry needs to be perceived. That's the first challenge, on bringing in clarity on how this needs to be taxed. And then the second part is making sure they give us some kind of a stable platform to recognize all of these businesses in one lens as platform-based gaming companies and tax us accordingly, before looking at, say, how much money they could make out of us today. They might kill what's left of it in the future.
Great. Jain Saab, your closing comments?
Well, I think they should see this through the lens that this sector could be the next big thing, and they must make a lasting contribution in terms of both a policy framework, which should be agile and flexible, and bringing tax stability, seeing that it has tremendous growth potential, revenue potential. If the sector does well, they'll do well. So a collaborative approach, not an adversarial approach. And I think that will be in line with what they call ease of business and a digital economy of the future. All of it will be the right DNA and the right recipe for this sector. And instead of doing a rollback like they did the retrospective tax, had huge international awards, and now they're trying to correct it. So have the right recipe which works, don't have to do course correction, and it will be a great signal to investors and to other sectors and companies in the digital ecosystem. So a forward-looking approach in one line, if I may put it that way.
Great. I think we have had a good discussion. My take finally, if I can just draw a conclusion, is this is online game is a great contributor to the Indian economy. It should be taxed properly so that the investors come in, the players come in. It's treated like a platform, simple, like any other platform, and a collaborative approach should be applied by the government, making it very clear, very different from a game of chance taxation. Thank you, everybody. I think we had a great discussion. Over to you, Soham.
Thank you, Mr. Sapra. Thank you, Mr. Shukla. Thank you, Mr. Sharma. Thank you, Gopal sir, for a wonderful discussion today in terms of the GST implications in the gaming sector. To close this session, I'd like to thank our partners, our title partner Game 24/7, powered by partner AppsFlyer in association with Trackia, platinum partner OnePlus, content delivery partner Limelight Networks, supported by Invest India, knowledge partner Redseer. Delegates, please look forward to the upcoming sessions at Gate 2021, and thank you, speakers and moderator, for a wonderful session. Thank you.
Thank you.